If the government isn't raising taxes, then why is everything so expensive? I've seen quite a few comments like this on my recent video about taxes, so let me explain. I'm Kalila Reynolds, financial journalist and educator based in Jamaica. Can you believe that a beef patty is $260? And don't even get me started on bread. That's up to $500 in some places. Well, that has to do more with inflation, not taxes. So I did a video recently explaining how the government plans to fund its $1 trillion budget without any new taxes. And many of you were skeptical because the price of everyday items has gone up significantly during the pandemic. But like I was saying earlier, that has more to do with inflation rather than taxation. So think of taxes like fees that the government puts on things and collects to help run the country. Meanwhile, inflation is essentially the rate at which prices for goods and services go up. In Jamaica, we tend to refer to inflation as cost of living. You know, the popular saying, the cost of living high, that's inflation. So inflation basically changes the value of money. And the higher inflation is, the less power your money has to stretch. So the cost of living get high. And that's why your parents can talk about paying 10 Jamaican dollars for rent in the 80s. Meanwhile, a one bedroom these days can go for as much as 150,000 JMD in Upper St. Andrew, you know? Well, in Jamaica, inflation is measured by the Consumer Price Index, which tracks price changes for goods and services. Point-to-point inflation compares inflation between two similar points in time. Example, February 2022 versus February 2023. Jamaica's point-to-point inflation rate for February was almost 8%, and that means that the cost of living in general is almost 8% higher this year than last year. So if something cost $100 last February, that same item costs $108 this February. Now, 8% is way better than where it was last year, which was 12%, but it's still higher than where the central bank wants it to be, which is between 4 and 6%. So many factors can influence inflation. For example, a drought can send the cost of basic food items up. Two of the biggest factors in the past 2 years have been the COVID-19 pandemic and the Russia-Ukraine war. Both crises placed strain on the oil industry, which made oil prices jump. So countries and companies had to pay more for oil, and then those countries and companies passed on those costs to customers. So flying costs more, driving costs more, and so does electricity. And as these prices go up, so does inflation. So whether or not the government has taxes on items, the prices would still change because inflation is a normal occurrence. It's when the rate goes too high, too quickly, that there's a problem. And that's also why the government's decision not to introduce any new taxes this year is good, because inflation is already eating up our paychecks along with the existing taxes that we already pay on stuff. So I hope that that clears up some of, these issues for you guys. Let me know what you're thinking in the comments below. And of course, subscribe to my newsletter at KalilaReynolds.com/newsletter for more info like this. And then let's get this money.